What's something you pretend to agree with because it's way too much work to explain why it's incorrect? I work in an assisted living memory care unit. Last week I agreed to help a dementia patient rob a train. This made me smile. My grandfather's memory has deteriorated immensely, and just last week he asked me to help him rob the store down the street. So we walked there and bought an ice cream. My mom believes everything she reads on Facebook, and bless her heart, but I've gotten tired of telling her not everything she reads on there is real. Ironic that they're the same ones that told us not to trust everything we see on the internet or TV. I agree with everything that drunk people say. Yep, MHM. I know, right? That's crazy. Same dude. Yeah, always. Crazy how that works. For sure, man. Dope. Yep. Repeaters needed. My friend lies a lot about things that have happened to her. Sometimes her story changes when I hear her tell it again, or she'll tell a story that I was there for to other friends in front of me. It's too much awkwardness to contradict her, so I just go with the flow. On the plus side, apparently I saved her life once on a mountain. It makes me look good, so who cares if we haven't gone hiking ever. My colleague just asked me for the high-res version of a screenshot. I renamed the file picture high resolution JPEG and sent it to her again. It took about 10 seconds. Why? Because this is her response. Amen. Thank you. The quality is so much better. It's just easier. Further down on this thread, when my coworker resends me a low-quality screenshot after I ask him. My barber asking me if I think the haircut is alright so far. Many of my friends with iPhones think if they switch to an Android they need to buy all Windows Google products. It's too much of a headache for me to explain Windows and Google are not the same OS, and that it is possible to have an Android phone, but a Mac computer and not lose your entire life. The amount of ignorance about examples of the modern Android OS are astounding, especially when you find people who have used iPhone exclusively since the 3GS. My now ex, call her Clitter Click, annoys the heck out of me, but I stopped correcting her a long time ago. Less funny, but I had a girlfriend who called the center console in her car a center console. She was the intimidatingly smart type, and I couldn't bring myself to correct her. It's not a freaking government. Yes, I will absolutely try your recommended home treatment for my skin condition that your brother says completely changed his life, instead of taking the dermatologist prescribed medication that has already made massive improvements. The terms and conditions for pretty much all software I use reminds me of the old Microsoft DOS floppies. The flap of the floppy sleeve had a sticker on it that stated, by breaking this seal you agree to the Microsoft terms and conditions. So people used to cut open the other end of the sleeve. Homeopathy. Maybe it's because it seems like it's more widespread in my country than in the rest of the world, France, to the point that it's advertised on every freaking pharmacy as if it was a legitimate drug. It would be too tiresome to explain my point of view every time, so I just shrug it off. I won't stop making snide remarks from time to time though. My dad did homeopathy. The argument is constant. It worked for ex-dude who was struggling. Big Pharma doesn't like it because they can't make money off, so studies are biased, etc. This crap is a conspiracy theory, nothing more. Not ready to stop calling him out on it yet though. Recently, trying to tell my younger co-workers not to be a dumbass when driving. Like, don't text and drive. Road rage isn't worth it since you don't know if the other person has a gun. You shouldn't freaking brake check people. It's such a hassle trying to get them to see why it's wrong, so I'm at the stage of it's not worth having this argument again. I like it doesn't matter if you're in the right if you're dead. Yeah, that diet you are on totally makes sense. One of her morbidly obese friends convinced my mom that carrots were unhealthy a few weeks ago. While the woman who sued McDonald's for excessively hot coffee was entirely deserving of the judgment she received. That's an impressive piece of corporate misrepresentation that has somehow ingrained itself with everyone. I have mostly given up. Yeah, the coffee wasn't hot. It freaking melted her mouth. I stopped bothering to explain to people how their home remedy or alternative therapy is probably not doing anything. They tend to get visibly upset when I try. My wife adopted all those remedies when she had cancer. I knew it was likely not doing her any good, but she felt like she had some control over her situation. And she also got traditional treatments, so it wasn't hurting anything. You're using that weird Linux. You must be a hacker. I once got sent to the principal's office in high school because I was hacking. I was just updating my system. I don't want to have kids, not now, not ever, but when people ask and I try to explain my reasons, everyone, without letting me explain, proceeds to explain that kids are the best thing that happened in their lives and why I should have one. After that, I just started saying that both my wife and I are still young, we'll see in the future, blah blah blah, because ILV had this conversation so many times that is the only way to cut it short. When my mother is bitching about my dad, at least, I used to just tolerate it, now I avoid talking to her. Group therapy just isn't doing anything to help me and only makes me feel worse, but I hide it because I know my mom will never be convinced otherwise. People think I'm a vegetarian for purely ethical reasons, and that's part of it, but it's more complicated than that. But I don't always feel like explaining things like I hate the weird texture of most meat. Honestly, I'd think that'd make for an easier explanation. My stepsister has never really liked the flavor of most meats with rare exceptions, so she's mostly a vegetarian. Then again, I could see why this would be hard since some people take "I don't like" as a challenge and get really insistent on the subject. If there are infinite universes, then that means there's a universe where insert wacky premise or beloved fictional universe is happening. I saw a post about geese-drawn carriages recently, so yeah, that's the reality I want to get in on. Irregardless versus regardless. I'm just too tired at this point. Just tell them to look it up. Personally, I avoid redundant prefixes, inflammable, for instance, because they tend to confuse people. My grandmother and aunt are both into clairvoyance and clearly get a lot out of attending ceremonies. I don't really want to tear up, especially my grandmother's, old wounds about my grandfather that a clairvoyant helped her be at peace with. My hairdresser loves all that. A while ago she told me that someone on the other side told her Harry and Meghan were going to have a girl. I'm looking forward to bringing that up at my next appointment. Mostly myths about fitness, like not eating late, not eating fat, working out in fat burning zone, etc. I mean, they are not true, but whatever man, if you say so. You don't catch a cold by going out in the cold without appropriate clothing or by having wet hair. I used to try explaining this to people, but they usually keep arguing about it being true. It's a harmless thing to believe in anyway, so I just go with it. The dark roast coffee actually has less caffeine than medium roast coffee. I agree with everything people say in real life because I hate conflict. It's different on the internet. Completely disagree. English professor here. I choose very carefully when I'm going to hit people with the fact that there is nothing wrong with splitting infinitives, ending sentences with a preposition, people using literally metaphorically, using they as a gender neutral pronoun, or that I'm not a particularly big fan of Oxford commas. Usually it just ends with them walking away convinced that I have no idea how to do my job. Anytime someone tries to claim that kids these days can't write though, I'll take those suckers to the mat every single time. Or that I'm not a particularly big fan of Oxford commas. Well, you can just go get cancer, die, and burn in heck. When co-worker resends me a low-res photo while labeling it as high-res. We have more than 5 senses. Just remind them that they have a sense of balance, can feel hunger, they know where their extremities are located without visual aid, etc. My hair. I have trichotillomania, a disorder that compels me to pull out my hair. It's not spoken about in mainstream society or well understood, so I just let people believe I have cancer as it is more understood than trichotillomania. I have used alopecia as an explanation. I do shave my head occasionally but haven't needed to do it for a while because I went 2 years without bald spots. Today I'm going to the salon and getting it buzzed down again and starting over. For some reason a documentary I saw about this has always stuck with me. I remember a lady who pulled out her own eyelashes. I felt so sorry for her as she was upset that all her eyelashes were gone but she couldn't stop doing it. People saying that I'm lucky to be thin, that I must have good genetics. I was almost obese and lost it all through diet and exercise. Nothing particularly exciting either, just ate smaller portions, tracked it via app and did cardio and strength training when I could. I still count calories and macros every day. I still eat treats and snacks, but I track it all. I am the size I am because it's the size I want to be, not because it's the size genetics made me. Most people can lose weight the same way, but they don't really want to believe it. If I try to be honest with how I did it, sometimes people get upset and offended even if they were the ones who brought it up in the first place. Unless I am very close with someone, I don't really try to argue with their weight loss beliefs anymore. I pray at the table along with my family, by which I mean I will hold the hand of the person sitting next to me while they close their eyes before meals. I feel you. I'm not religious, have never been probably, but I participate in religious ceremonies with family because refusing would make me look like I'm trying to make a scene. Although my family is somewhat aware, I don't really give a dang. Basically anything my 4-year-old says. Sorry for being that guy, but explaining things and telling them how things really work are great for their development. The general consensus on how drugs work and what drug users are like. I just can't be bothered since this is a subject that seems to raise a lot of big feelings. Also, people will just automatically assume that you are a junkie if you don't judge someone immediately upon hearing they've used illegal substances. Not worth it. I have seen this at the hospital where I work. Someone could come in with a medical problem completely unrelated to drug use, but if they admit to using recreational drugs, all of a sudden they're written off as druggies and not treated with nearly the same concern or respect. It's pretty sad. I agree with most things my patients with dementia say, purely because it is their reality, and there's not much use trying to convince them otherwise. When people start spouting weird theories, conspiracy or not, even worse when it's two of them who agree, we are being lorded over by EU, which is lorded over by US, which is run by Jews, who are key. How do I exit this thing without appearing rude? They were co-workers. Practically anything to do with trans people. I just nod, throw in random interesting, didn't think of it that way and hum. Top that with some non-committal grunts and try to either change the subject or leave. You might be right if pressed on an issue. Politics I disagree with when it comes to family. Generally try to avoid the issue altogether and prefer neutral. All are corrupt bastards which nobody will dispute. I'll never pretend to agree with transphobes. I have a pretty complex relationship with feminism, as I'm sure a lot of women have. It's too long to get into right now, but I never really feel comfortable with the people who denounce it entirely, nor the people who believe that if you don't consider yourself a feminist, you're uneducated. I've also gotten the internalized misogyny accusation. I've thought about it a lot. I've been reading up for years. I've tried to engage with as much information on all of the issues regarding modern feminism as I possibly can. But I'm friends both with people who mock and abhor it, and people who would assume I'm ignorant looking for male approval if I don't align myself with it. So, generally speaking, I kind of listen, or nod, or say oh, okay, maybe I don't know everything about this topic, or oh, okay, that's interesting. There are pros and cons etc etc. I feel like there is no way to really sum up how I feel succinctly, except for the fact that I do deeply care about these issues and want to engage with them and would prefer to talk about them at length in an unbiased way. But, yeah, I guess it's highly emotive as a topic, so I can understand why. Usually, I stifle myself a bit in those conversations and sort of nod and smile, unless the person has said something completely misinformed, immoral, nasty. I'm sure I'm not the only person who feels this way. I live in a very liberal college town and this is how I feel about most social issues. Unless you're 100% aligned with all the correct liberal values, you're considered uninformed and unenlightened here. It's all very white upper class liberalism though. It's very identity centric and ego boosting here. If you fall in the water, your clothes will pull you down so you will drown. While you can get tangled in voluminous clothes, they will not pull you down while you're in the water. It's when you try and get out that the weight of water in clothes will pull you back into the water but not beneath it. One of the requirements to get your A-level swimming degree over here is to swim a lap or two with clothes on. I have friends that legitimately believe being gay is a choice. That's because they've made a choice not to suck all that dong they want to. Autistic people are stupid. Wrong. Them being autistic doesn't necessarily mean that they are stupid, even if you know a stupid autistic person or two. True, they may be stupid, but that's not because they're autistic. Anything my dad says when talking about physics. I'm studying it at uni and he learns most of what he knows from documentaries. Honestly, some of the stuff he's said just makes me cringe. I have a father like this. Every time I try to explain, in easy words, why he is wrong, I'm just a child. Every time I explain the topic in scientific wording, I'm the know-it-all who should shut the frick up. Okay paps, taking a credit from a bank is straight up all bad. Nothing positive about it. You are right. Diamonds. The monopolistic diamond culture of the past and how we got to where we are. It takes way too much time and ends up offending people who spend too much money. I can pretty much ruin any engagement ring. My dad and his insistence that if my sister would come back to church all her problems would go away, even though she had severe depression even when she participated in church. Also really any of my dad's opinions. He has a very strong personality and doesn't see past his own experiences and thinking. We've all learned to just smile and nod because he can't be convinced he's wrong. Proper use of I versus me. I have a few co-workers who just use I when referring to themselves and another person, regardless of where it lies grammatically. I could explain it but I just don't care enough. My husband always says nuclear instead of nuclear. I just let it go. You have been visited by the wealth rat. Subscribe in 12 seconds and he will share his wealth with you. Like and subscribe, you magnificent person.